Hello, and thank you for joining us for another episode of This Week in AML. I'm John Byrne, Chair of the AMLRS Advisory Board.
And I'm Elliot Berman, our Creative Director. We are excited to welcome you to the This Week in AML podcast,
where we explore key news and developments in the global financial crime prevention community.
John, how are you today?
Hi, Elliot. Thanks for dialing in during vacation. Really appreciate it. Hope you're having a good time.
Yeah, having a great time. Thanks for asking. So even though I'm on vacation, I'm trying to pay attention to the ever-emerging news. Did you see the press release from the U.S. Attorney's Office in the Eastern District of Texas about the card payment fraud indictment that they received?
Yeah, it was interesting on a couple of levels. I did see it, and it's the case is being investigated by the FBI's Washington field office, and as you just mentioned, being prosecuted by U.S. attorneys in the Eastern District of Texas. But this sort of touches a variety of spaces that our community cares about, and that's fraud detection, prevention, money laundering, payment processing. So according to the press release, the grand jury is indicted former executives at ETS. I think people are familiar with ETS, the Electronic Transaction Systems Corporation, and accused them of defrauding about 7,000 merchant clients, defrauding them out of millions of. There's a lot here to unpack. Short press release, but a lot here to unpack. One is that ETS, as I know and you know, because your previous life working with trade associations, it's a card processing company located in Virginia, and they do equipment and services that facilitate credit and debit card payment transactions for merchant clients. And so the indictment says that many of these merchants were defrauded by ETS. Disguise a portion of their processing fees. So they would embed the fees in what they call interchange fees, and they would also deliberately I think they'll have to be proven, obviously, but it's alleged that they misled the clients in emails and contracts, didn't disclose the true fee structure. So all that in there was, again, a whole host of different types of frauds.
Yes, and you mentioned the other thing that's interesting, in the payment world, many merchant processors end up focusing on particular industries, and their focal industries were kind of interesting in that they were focusing on charities, municipalities, many of whom have begun to have their fees payable by credit or debit card. So kind of an interesting twist to there, because these are not high-flying companies, selling luxury goods.
Right, and according again to the indictment, the president directed these other defendants to do the defrauding, and also the president and one other person mentioned in the indictment. They obtained these funds and also personally enriched themselves with bonuses, high-end real estate. The president apparently received an additional $107 million because of the concealment prior to their acquisition, ETS's acquisition. So there's also a money laundering charge, obviously, in addition to the wire fraud and the other types of fraud. We haven't seen the actual indictment, and we should mention, as lawyers, we know this. It's an allegation, and all the defendants are obviously innocent until proven guilty. But this is fairly unusual press release, just based on the grand jury indictment. I'm sure there's been others, but this just seemed to be a little bit more. We wanted to get this out there as soon as we could.
Yeah, I agree with that. So in addition to this press release, I know you've been following the news. What else have you seen that you thought was interesting this week in our space?
Well, there's been a bunch of things going on, as everybody knows. The search warrant issued against the former president is big in the news, and big in the news because of the reaction of certain parts of the political spectrum, which relates to this other point. The other point being the Inflation Reduction Act that passed the Senate includes in it additional funding for IRS. And as we know, because of our good friends and relationships with IRS, especially in the CI section, that they have been struggling for a number of years once they've lost agents to bring in new agents, resources, all of that. And there's so much that IRS needs in terms of funding. So this funding is part of the package. And almost immediately, again, certain spectrums of the political world attacked it as IRS agents will now be auditing everybody, and we should be worried about that, which is obviously both ridiculous and fails to recognize the tax evasion problem from high income earners and some corporations that we know has been going on for a long period of time. You just don't have the resources to deal with it. But to your point, the Secretary of the Treasury, Janet Yellin, did something I thought was pretty unusual. She published and sent a letter to the IRS Commissioner Rettig supporting the funding. So actually goes through in the letter why this is needed for a bunch of reasons. And that was because they've seen the attacks in the media from basically Republicans that are saying that we don't want to give more resources to an agency that's so dependent upon updating their infrastructure from IT issues. Again, when agents move on to the private sector, filling those slots. So in the letter to Rettig, which was published and issued publicly, they talk about a couple of things in there that I thought was interesting. Enforcement resources. They say, Yellin says, will focus on high-end non-compliance. There, sustained multi-year funding is critical to the agency's ability to make the investments needed to pursue what they're calling a robust attack on the tax gap by targeting crucial challenges, like we said, large corporations, high net worth individuals, and complex pass-throughs, where today IRS has resources to initiate just 7,500 audits a year out of more than 4 million returns received in that space. And so that's why you need sophisticated revenue agents, sophisticated resources. And that's why Yellin makes it very clear that these resources will, as they say, support a much needed upgrade of technology that's decades out of date, and investment in a taxpayer service so the IRS can communicate with taxpayers. And that's something everybody wants, right? When you send in your tax returns and you think you're getting a response, or you're getting money back, whatever it is, you want customer service to be top notch, and they just have not been able to do that for a number of years because of resource issues. So the letter ends by saying this is a historic investment, and it'll accomplish two objectives. It'll raise substantial revenue to address the deficit, create a fairer system where those at the top who do not comply today with tax obligations, they will get the service from the IRS that they deserve. And I think that's the issue here. Tax evasion is a major, major problem. And as we know from this week's that we've talked about, the creation of shell companies, the need for more beneficial ownership information, this all ties together, right? So I think that's a key. And I would be remiss if I just didn't also say, the men and women of IRS CI and all of IRS, but we've worked very closely with them in a partnership to help improve our fraud detection and money laundering prevention. And we're just so fortunate to have those relationships, and they need support. No, they don't need to be attacked.
Yeah, I think, as you pointed out, this is quite unique to have the Secretary of the Treasury publish essentially a public letter,
right,
on a topic like this. And generally in the past, while there may be disagreements during the legislative process, we haven't seen necessarily the vitriol about a particular provision as we're seeing today. So as you and I have talked other times, there are many things in our government that people disagree about, but a fair tax system that supports all taxpayers and the betterment of the whole country is something that seems as if it should have general support, or at least once the legislative process is complete, should be allowed to move forward without a lot of negative conversation.
Right. So I want to get you back to your vacation. I want to remind people that on August 25th, we have a webinar that's going to cover issues related to transparency and corruption, issues like that. So we have two excellent presenters, Gary Coleman from Transparency International and Jonathan Lopez, a former DOJ lawyer in private practice, that are going to cover issues that are both important domestically and globally, and talk a little bit about what we mentioned, I think, a few weeks ago, the Enablers Act, because the Transparency International folks have been pretty instrumental in moving that, and they certainly have a view on that, and we'd like to hear that. So that'll be on August 25th, 1 o'clock Eastern Time. Information is on our website.
And that's where you can register as well. So, John, you have a great weekend, and we will talk again next week.
All right. Take care of yourself. Stay safe. Talk soon.
You too. Bye-bye. Bye.